Hi, and welcome to the Taylor's Expressions YouTube channel. My name is Terry, and today I am sharing a fun card, a set of fun cards that I created using the Baking Spirits Bright set. So let's get started. Okay, so for the supplies, I am starting off with toffee colored cardstock, as well as cinnamon cardstock, buttercream frosting, Oreo, jalapeno, and cherry pop cardstock, and I'm also using some of the coordinating color inks as well. I will be using the color cinnamon, sour gummy, jalapeno, cherry pop, huckleberry, VersaFine clear ink, as well as Versamark ink. And of course, I will need my blending brushes, a white gel pen, and some masking paper that I trimmed down to 1/8 inch. I had a few of this. I'm not going to use all of it, but I just always like to create extra. And as well as some paint. I like using this paint palette here. It has the perfect gold color paint to create splatters. I will also need foam squares as well as liquid adhesive. Okay, and for the main products, I am using Baking Spirits Bright, the stamp, along with the coordinating dies. I am also using Seasoned Sweetings sentiments. I love the sentiments on this sentiment set. And also the Stitch Rectangle Stackables and some cute embellishments. So here is a close-up look at the stamp set. Baking Spirits Bright along with the coordinating dies. And I love the stamp set because you can create two different types of Christmas cookies. You could actually just create the traditional type of Christmas cookies, or you could create the frosted type of Christmas cookies. And I will show you both ways here in this video. Okay, so to start off, I'm going to create the traditional Christmas cookies. So I'm going in with the color cardstock in toffee, and I'm inking the stamps with Versamark clear ink. And I like using this clear ink because it's nice and juicy, and it holds onto the embossing powder really well. I did also condition the cardstock with an anti-static powder tool before I inked the stamps. Okay, so after I stamped out the images, I am going in with white embossing powder. And I applied the white embossing powder to all of the inked images. And after that, I went ahead and used my heat tool and heat set the images. Okay, so depending on what type or what style of Christmas cookie that you're going to create, there's two options of dies that you will need. So the set comes with a larger and smaller size die for each coordinating stamp. So if the style that you want is a regular traditional Christmas cookie, you're going to select the larger set of dies from the set. So here you can see that I'm going in with the coordinating dies and just using a low tack tape to adhere that onto the cardstock. And I like using a lot of tape in this situation because I tend to have errors using my die cutting machine, and I always like to be sure that when I run it through that it will stay in place. So this is a great way, is using a lot of tape. And here is a close-up look at the final traditional Christmas cookie. And you can see how lovely it looks with the embossed areas from the embossing powder. Sure, you can stamp this with white ink, but I feel like the dimension and the texture that is given with the embossing powder makes a big difference. Okay, so now I am going to show you guys how to create a regular frosted cookie. So I'm doing the same thing here, but instead of using toffee colored cardstock, I'm going in with jalapeno cardstock. And I already went ahead and conditioned my cardstock, and I stamped that with Versamark ink. And again, I did have to stamp that a few times just to make sure I got a good impression. I also did the same thing to cherry pop colored cardstock as well as cinnamon colored cardstock. Now that all of the colored cardstocks are heat embossed and ready to go, this is going to be the frosting for our cookies. So remember how we used the larger dies for the traditional style cookies? Here we're going to use the smaller dies to create the frosting. So I'm going in with the smaller dies for the coordinating stamps, and I'm going to run that through my die cutting machine. Now we're going to select the larger dies for the coordinating stamps that we're using, and we're going to run that out of toffee colored cardstock. You can select any other cardstock that you like, but I feel like the toffee colored cardstock creates a nice doughy color, and I think that's perfect for the frosted cookies. And here's a look at all of the frosted cookies, and I wanted to show you guys a comparison of the traditional frosted cookies. You could see the style is completely different, but they're both super cute in their own ways, and it depends on the style that you're going for. And that's the great thing about this stamp and die set, is that it has so much versatility. Okay, so before I adhere all the frosting pieces onto the cookie base, I want to give it a little bit more interest. So I'm going in with cinnamon colored ink and my blending brush, and I'm just applying ink to the edges of the die cut pieces. And here I wanted to show you guys the comparison. So here on the upper right hand side is the one that we just inked blend, and the bottom is just regular toffee cardstock. They both look great, but I feel like when we're adding a little bit of blending, it creates a little bit of dimension, so it kind of looks like the cookie has been baked in the oven. I went ahead and did the exact same thing to the traditional styled cookies as well. Now it's time to add a little more interest to the overall cookies. I am going in with cinnamon colored ink, and I just dabbled that onto an acrylic block. I spritzed down some water just to dilute that, and I'm using my painting brush to pick that up, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to splatter this all over my cookies. And I'm using liquid adhesive to adhere the frosting on top of the cookie base. I really love the look of these cookies, and it came out so good. I think it will look really good also if you apply glossy accents or some glitter on top of the cookies. Okay, so now let's talk about the background. So I mentioned earlier that I created some masking strips. So this is from a sheet of masking paper that I trimmed down to 1/8 of an inch. And I trimmed out a lot of this because I do like having this on hand. So I don't have a lot of pattern paper in my stash, but I love creating my own pattern. So what I'm going to do is I'm using butter frosting cardstock, and I trimmed that down to an A2 size card, and I'm using the masking paper or the masking strips to create a pattern onto the cardstock. I am going in at an angle, and I'm not being too mindful of the gaps between the masking paper because I wanted that part to vary. So towards the right hand side is a little larger, but when I'm going towards the upper side of the cardstock, I'm masking off the strips a little closer to each other because I wanted the strips or the color of the pattern to show a little more. So now that we have our masked area, I'm going in with sour gummy ink, and I'm blending that onto the cardstock. So what the masking paper is doing here is it's masking off the ink from the cardstock. So the ink blending is only going to show up on areas that doesn't have a mass on it. So after the blending was complete, I wanted to add a little bit more color. So I'm going in with my paint palette, and I'm just splattering gold paint all over the card panel. And off screen, I did the exact same thing, but I used different colored ink pads. I used jalapeno, cherry popped, and huckleberry. Now we're going to focus on the sentiments, and I love the sentiments in this stamp set because it coordinates so well with the cookies. I went ahead and used the stitch rectangle stackables and die cut that out of sugar cube cardstock. I also used VersaFine clear ink to stamp out the sentiment. So now it's time to adhere everything together. So the sentiment panel, I went ahead and used liquid adhesive and adhered that down to the pattern paper panel that we created. Then I used foam squares to adhere the frosted cookie onto the panel. I like to create a mat against my card panel, so I trimmed down Oreo cardstock a little bit larger than my card panel, and I adhere that together using liquid adhesive. I then adhered it to a top folding card base and the color sugar cube, and I'm using liquid adhesive to adhere that together. And to add a little more interest, I'm adding some of the embellishment onto the card panel. Now to finish off the card design, I love going in with a white gel pen, and I'm using the white gel pen to create highlights and details throughout the card panel. And that pretty much completes the card. Here's a look at the card that we created together, and I am going to show you a few of the other cards that I created off screen. So it's pretty much the same exact technique, but a different frosted cookie or a traditional cookie. Okay, I hope you guys found this tutorial useful, and please don't forget to thumbs up, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, I hope you have a beautiful day. Bye-bye.